All right, so we have a good amount of people here so far, and as folks will continue to trickle in, we'll welcome them as well. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We're really excited about today's Open Studio session. We are joined today by David Greene, who is the CEO and President of Urbanomics Consulting Group. David is an award-winning certified strategic planner, facilitator, and leadership and executive coach. He has been producing leadership development events for global companies, including employee research groups, professional associations, leading universities, private foundations, and other nonprofits for nearly 2 decades. For much of the same time, he has been well regarded for his strategies that support organizational clients in identifying, assessing, and develop diverse talent for leadership roles. So again, we're so excited to have David join us today. And with that, I'll hand it over to David to get us started.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you today. And we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right in. I like questions, so chat is open and we invite you to put your comments and questions there. I want to begin today's session with two simple truths. Good work isn't enough. That's the bad news. And then leadership reputation is not something that you earn once and you keep forever. It's something that you have to design and redesign inside of a system. And this session is going to help you do that. It's going to at least get at it. And more importantly, how you show up inside of that system and how you can start to shape it before it shapes you. So today we're going to look at why high performance, which I'm sure many of you are high performers, doesn't always lead to the promotion, and why leadership perception gets stuck, if you will, and what systems thinking can do about it. But before we go into the systems tools, which many of you are familiar with, I want to bring us closer to home. And because we don't always experience systems as charts and diagrams, we experience them as moments in feedback and meetings, etc. And so let's start with a quick reflection. When I believe you all got some pre-work, if you will, and we asked you to go out to select a few colleagues and ask them what 3 words really represents how they think about your leadership reputation. Now, for those of you who didn't get a chance to do that, it's absolutely okay, because we're going to give you an opportunity to discuss that inside we're going to do some breakouts. Okay, so in a moment, we're going to put you into these breakout groups, and the question is simple. If your colleagues or your boss had to describe your leadership in 3 words, what would they say? Don't overthink it. Just reflect on how your current leadership reputation is showing up and what patterns you might be experiencing, or people may be experiencing about you without you realizing it. You'll have 4 minutes in the breakout group, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So can we open those breakout groups, please? Those breakout groups.
All right, so I think we have everyone back from the breakout rooms now.
Okay. Thank you, Melanie. So welcome back. I want to hear what stuck out for you. So let me encourage everyone to use chat to add your comments there. We have time to hear from 1 or 2 people, but then we'll also feel free to participate in chat there. Anyone, any volunteers, any brave souls out there who want to just tell us a little bit about that exercise and what you took away from it?
Can I make a comment about the exercise?
Yeah, yes.
Well, my name is Anita Smiley. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm in the Midwest, so it's 11 a.m. here, 11:11. And so what I spoke to someone from Open Studio, really amazing. I think I did all the talking, but because I talk a lot. But one thing that I was telling her, as I said it out loud, it kind of really hit me. I think there's a generational shift in how Black women are showing up at work. I think that even in my mom's, era, she'll say, "Oh, you got that tattoo, you won't be able to get a job." I'm like, Yes, I can. So I think there's a shift in just no longer assimilating. It's sort of like I'm gonna come in as I am. I know a lot of us, I'm 36, so we always talk about we no longer code switch. We don't go in and out, like this is who we are. And so
Mhm.
I think if we constantly walk in those norms and walk in that box, then you'll expect that from me. And I can see the shift happening like among some of the workspaces I've been in.
Very good. A very, very great comment. And I'm sorry, what is your name? Because I can't see you right now. What's your name?
Oh, it's Alnita.
Alanita? Okay.
Or Nita.
Oh, Nita. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
Nita.
for that comment. So it's a lot in that, and I would love to unpack that with you at some other time, honestly. Um, that is absolutely okay that you feel that way. That actually means and actually makes for a much richer conversation today as well. So we'll get back to that as well, right? That's a choice, and I hear you and understand that. Yeah. Anyone else? Christy's gonna say the same thing. Um, Great. One other person it wants to share out here, and we're gonna move on.
I'll share in our discussion. One of the things that stood out is that the person I was speaking with talked about the different in the words that people would use in an organization where people prioritize connection and humanness on the one hand versus or relationships versus where they prioritize work, right? And so the same person can show up to two different organizations and they would be characterized with different words based on what's prioritized by their leader or in that organization.
Got it. So is that a description that's based on the culture of the organization of how people would talk about that person? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Great observation. And that's true. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to move on here. So the big idea today, that's really what I want you to take away from this. Your reputations move faster than resumes. We put a lot of time into what we want to say about who we are in our resumes. And that's great. And at the same time, the reputation that precedes you has a lot of impact as well, no matter what your choices are in words. The solution is also that performance isn't enough. And so we have to look at perception, we have to look at image, we have to look at exposure. Your reputation is a part of a broader system. And we have to really understand how to leverage those to get what we want out of it. So not that you're not already successful, not that you're not already a high performer, not that you are not already leading, whether or not you have the title. The question is, couldn't you get more if that's what you really wanted? Is anything in your way? So visibility, that exposure, flows from strategic impact. And I'm going to talk to you more about that as well. So many high performers that I know and coach are stuck in what we call that frozen middle, that rung right below executive leadership in many cases. And as exceptional as they may be, they're caught in this trap of invisible performance, is how we talk about it. So without disruption, they will drift, right? They will be there. There will be a flight risk at even some points in their career at that organization instead of getting the recognition, reward, and promotion that they may want and deserve. So I want to introduce you to one of my clients. And his name, I'm going to switch it up here, just as I thought about this, because this will live on the internet for a long time. um, so let's call him James. James is caught, he's one of those folks caught in this invisible performance trap. Um, like me, James got a lot of this advice from his parents. Work really hard, outwork everyone. Come in early in the mornings, work through lunch, stay late, just outwork everyone. Um, and he believed that doing great work would speak for itself, but the system wasn't designed to see that great work. It wasn't he wasn't getting the recognition. So what happens here in this trap, work effort, as it goes up, the perception that he is not ready also goes up. right? He's not doing the right things to help and signal to folks that he's ready for that next step. And so what happens with that is his promotion is then denied. And that happens again, right? It becomes this cycle. It's this reinforcing loop. The harder he works, the greater the perception is that he's not ready, and then he gets denied the promotion. All right? So that's what it looks like when good work isn't enough. I'm gonna keep moving here. So in the interest of that, I have a couple of objectives for today. So we're going to diagnose the self-reinforcing loops, part of what we just did there, that trap high performance. We're going to identify those hidden forces shaping leadership reputation and the drift trap of invisible performance. We talked a little bit about that already. We're going to surface leadership reputation systems using the iceberg model, which is much of what we will get an opportunity to discuss, and then behavior over time graphs and stock flow mapping as well. Then we're going to talk about we're going to challenge some assumptions and shift perception patterns using that ladder of inference, which many of you will already be familiar with. And then we want to talk about some new strategies to balance performance, strategic leadership, identity, and visibility, right? And at the end here, we're ambitious. We get an opportunity to talk a little bit about an action plan. How does that sound? All right, I'm going to take that as that's exciting. So here's our poll. I want to start with a poll here. And oh, hold on. Can you all see that? Nope. Can you see the that user code at the top of the screen? Are you able to see that number? So if you go to menti.com, yes, perfect. That code will allow you to join the poll. And I gotta do something here because I realized that that poll, that's not the one that we want. I want the other one. Great. Now I see the video. And I see the see faces like that. And keep adding those responses there. So what is currently the strongest driver of your professional reputation? So you got some feedback already from your from colleagues, managers, etc. So just going to keep this moving because again, we have a lot to cover. When you look at this, what is surprising for you? Can you see the all right, can you see performance, image, exposure, and some folks are not sure. For those, take one or two. So when you select, what made you select performance? Anyone who selected performance? You're
Yeah,
showing us. Go ahead. Yes.
yeah, so the feedbacks that I got on the three words that I received from the people I checked with, it points towards my performance as the driver of my leadership reputation to them.
Very good. That's good. And did they say anything else?
They actually elaborated as well why they chose the word they chose to describe me, and that was good feedback for me to know where I'm headed, where I started from, and where I think I serve the purpose very well.
Very good. Anyone who picked the image? want to say anything about it? I love this. I love the way that this group has answered because, oftentimes I don't see this exactly in this way, so it's good. For anyone who said exposure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. Even though I think that my performance and image are incredibly linked to my exposure, as you've mentioned, that invisible work, the work that's not collaborative or doesn't directly impact my colleagues or leadership, they don't really know about that. It's the relationships that I've built internally with people who see my work regularly and are impacted by my work that I think have started to recognize the traits that I was given as feedback. So that's why I selected exposure.
Very good. Like it.
And
And so,
this is Allison, and they're all three important, I think, but I picked exposure partly because showing up is really important and people's memories are kind of short term. And if you're not in the room,
yeah.
and I've noticed it recently just because we've had to be out because of work for various reasons of being out a little more than we have been in, say, the past couple of years. And people have told me in other meetings, like, you're everywhere. And so I'm like, that's
Yeah.
good. I'm glad someone's noticing because I'm trying to be. So that's good.
Very nice. Very nice. For those who answered they're not sure, in the interest of time, we'll talk a little more about this. It'll become clearer to you as we go. All right. So I thank you for understanding. All right. Okay. Give me a minute here. All right, there we go. So this is a model that some of you may be familiar with. His name is Harvey Coleman, and the latest version of his book, an update, a rewrite, was in 2005. And what I'm always struck by this is how relevant this is even still 20 years later. I believe that was Allison who said it, right? Like exposure, a couple of folks who said it, maybe Christy as well, but exposure is really important because you could be working hard, the invisible work, and if no one knows about that work and its contribution and its strategic impact, oftentimes you go unrecognized, and so you don't get rewarded in way of promotions or whatever it may be. And so what's always striking about this conversation is performance is actually the least of the three. And I have endless conversations about it, right? Because the point being is everyone, I think many of us get the same message, right? And certainly at work, it's important to deliver. But remember that those are table stakes. If you don't do your job well, they probably are going to show you the door, or you're going to get sidelined in some way, demoted. Right? But exposure to the right people is important. And so the decision makers are the folks that we mean when we talk about that. Okay? So I'm going to keep moving here. And what we'll have the opportunity to do, I want you to think about this, some terms that you're going to hear, and I want you to remember them because they will come up throughout or be referenced for us. So performance, image, and exposure are the roots of the work that I do in the coaching. The way I often reframe performance is about strategic contributions. So we all have those laundry lists of things that we need to get accomplished for work. But I want you to take away from that is that everything on that list isn't important. And so we have to make choices about where we put our time. That's what makes contributions strategic. Second is the image, a strategic identity. I encourage everyone I work with to understand the organization's priorities or strategic goals because you want to make sure that your work is directly contributing to that, because then that also becomes a way of them thinking about you, right? Your identity in relationship to the things that make a difference in the organization. You get to, are you an enabler? Are you a fast thinker? Or you are a high performer or high potential? Lots of different ways to talk about it. The exposure is the strategic visibility, right? Like we're not running and chasing attention. We're being very intentional about where we show up and why. Does that make sense? Any questions about that before we move on? So what you see here is the iceberg is going to help us understand how to get at better, get beyond what is seen at that surface, because there's so much happening at this that is not seen about and below the waterline. There's a performance and evaluation system. There are competencies that are assessing how well you perform or not. There are leadership programs designed to help you strengthen your skills in certain areas, right? Like all of that is happening below this. So we want to understand that. And that's what we're going to do. So James, right, the client that I was talking about, when we really thought about what was happening for him, he had been in 3 companies over the course of about 6 years. He made some very intentional choices to leave because, I won't get into all the details, but he felt like he was not getting the promotions that he wanted. So this is a first-person account of his assessment of what was happening. So when we looked at performance and we had that conversation, he was concerned that he kept getting passed over for promotions, which informed his decision to leave the next company that he was at. Any of us know anybody like that? No? Or yes? Okay. As far as his image was concerned, he thought he was just knocking it out of the park. I was known as a team player who was a fix-it guy in that, but that didn't pay any value and benefit to him. And he would take on lots of the assignments. Anytime there was a problem, he raised his hand to say, okay, look, I can fix that. And he would do that. And he had that reputation. But guess what? There's a penalty also to be paid for being the fix-it person, because they then give you all the problems. And they may not be thinking that you are someone who can play from the front. Just one perspective, right? And then the exposure. He regularly got passed over in spite of him fixing a lot of big problems in the organization to be in front of those companies' executives. So when you hear that story, right, what do you think? Anyone, just one.
Somebody at my last job used to always say the reward for doing good work is more work, but not more pay. And so that's what I thought of. And I was like, nope, I don't want it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, or at least that's one part of it. What else about mindset? Is there anything else that we can learn there? And don't be afraid, no wrong answers here. I want to get some voices in the room.
Mental models are the toughest to shift.
Yeah, that's right. And and when you've heard it for half your life or most of your life, it's kind of hard to just switch it over, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's one part of what happened, right? Like now let's go a little deeper. What else? What do we see here? So again, these are first person account for him, right? He didn't pay enough attention to the unspoken expectations of his role to get promoted, right? Right. Sometimes what we do is we just focus strictly on what's in front of us, right? We don't really try to get underneath that. I like the question like, okay, so I'm doing that to what end? What does that yield me? Well, how is that going to benefit me? Right? So for him, he wanted to understand, he finally got to the place where he was like, okay, well, why isn't this working? If I'm the team player and I'm the fix-it guy, why am I not getting the rewards? What? So he's a friend. He comes to you and he says that. What do you say to him?
If this was a coworker of mine who felt frustrated, sorry, I should say my name by the way, because I know you can't see us all, David. I'm Bailey.
Hi, Bailey.
Hi. If this was a coworker of mine and they came to me and they said, this keeps happening, my performance is great, and my team members seem to think I'm on board, but I can't get over this barrier. I think I would be curious if they had ever talked to their supervisor about what does a growth opportunity look like for me in this role, to get the direct feedback from at least somebody who has got a higher level of leadership that might be able to influence or expose what it takes to move up.
I love that. That's exactly right. Because a lot of the time, what shows up, what sabotages us in these cases, is that we're stuck in these patterns, right? Like, okay, a lot of people don't have those direct conversations with us. So, what we have an opportunity to do here, and what we worked on was to actually work to look at his behaviors over time. It's like, what you're doing is getting you more of the same. So is there an opportunity to disrupt that? How do we do that? And so what you see here, again, there's a lot here, but the behaviors or these observed strategic behaviors on the Y graph, right, is really what we were trying to do. Move the needle on his feedback from his manager and peers on how he was being much more strategic about these behaviors. And so over time, right, we were able to then, you see the yellow curve starting to shift upward because he was being much more strategic about what he was doing. So those are those emerging strategic behaviors that he started to get rewarded from. Although by the diagram here, he was a consistent contributor with that broken red line, right? But to get the lift he wanted, there was this critical reflection point this recognition point where we had to get him to say, okay, what are the success behaviors that are going to be rewarded? Because that's the key part of it. You have to put in, and I like to say, you have to have a foot in both camps, if you will, right? Like be really good at the written role, the written assigned role to you, but also be very, very opportunistic if you desire to get promoted about how you take on opportunities in which you say no to. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question though?
Yes, love a question. Yes.
Sometimes,
And can you just say your name for me?
oh, Alnita.
Oh, that's you again. Okay, hi, Linda.
Yeah. So sometimes what people think of you like supersedes all of this. I remember being at an organization where this girl I worked with, my colleague, was a top performer. She was amazing, but the way that the leadership perceived her, not even us, more so, when they say, oh, you talk a good talk, you don't walk a good walk. That's how they perceived her. And so even though she could do it and we knew it, they didn't think that she could. So she never moved up. So she really just had to leave the organization because that supersedes everything.
Yeah. Well, so you're talking about image, right? And that's really critically important. And so you're right in that exposure or how decision makers think about who you are matters a great deal. And you see how those two things come together, though. So it wasn't just about her image, it's also the people who have the opportunities and the folks who are making decisions are stuck in a loop about her as well, right? Not giving her the opportunity to update to update her image and how people think about her strategic identity. And, sometimes that's easier to do than people may often think, right? And I don't want to downplay what you're saying. I get that because I hear it often, but there is a way to break that cycle. So again, I wish I could go deeper on some of these topics today, but I am so recognize that we have a lot of content that we want to cover, so I'm going to keep it moving.
I have an example I wanted to bring up. This is Janice, by the way.
Hi,
So
Janice.
I had a coworker, very, very, very intelligent, very smart, able to get work accomplished, exceeded just about every technical expectation, but had very poor communication skills. Treated people badly, ridiculed them, things like that. And no matter how many times she turned in good work, it was superseded by her behavior.
Yeah, that became the frame of how people thought about her.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while it's 30% of this model, of that pie model, it has a great deal of impact because it's also interacting with strategic visibility, right? And so when you combine those two together, they long outweigh performance. So you can be very smart, can be well accomplished, but do you play well with others, as we like to say, right? And if the answer is no, there is a risk that, putting that person in charge of the assignment and other people have to report to him or her, morale suffers, flight risk can happen. There's a great deal in that calculation. So thank you for that example. Right. So structure of the system, right? We talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but those causal loops, right? Like that reinforcing one, the question is, how do we start to disrupt it? How do we balance it a little more? And so there are these strategic behaviors that we can focus on. But at this organization, right, when we were talking about, I talked about all those other elements that are at play, systems within systems, if you will. This company's talent, performance, competencies changed every 3 years. So why is that important to what we're talking about today? If your idea of being a high performer is simply by playing to what is on the page and doing that really well, then what happens is you get stuck because these other variables are being introduced constantly. So we are all familiar with reorgs today. I mean, every organization, I don't care if it's in the nonprofit sector or if it's in private, it's this accelerated rate of constant change. And so when an organization does that, one of the things that we don't always have visibility into is that they're also changing their competency models, but these success behaviors, as we call them, to understand how the organization is going to achieve its goals, its financial performance, et cetera. Right? So policies are also things that require even higher performing talent to be in a role for a certain amount of time. That was the other thing. So, okay, if you come in and the culture and their policies say that you need to be in a role for 5 years before you can be promoted, that's what you have to do. And a lot of people don't appreciate that, right? Particularly if you feel like you're really good and you want to move in, 5 years or 3 years. So you get the point. So the questions of what are the relationships among the parts of the system? And how do you ensure that you understand all of them? Does that resonate?
Hi, David. This is Bailey again. It
Bailey?
definitely resonates with me. It honestly reminds me a lot of sort of when you're looking for jobs and you have a salary expectation or a
Yes,
desire of a salary, but you have to look at what the market actually will support for that role, regardless of what you need to live or what you think you deserve. This
yes.
this reminds me a lot of that sort of what does the system demand, regardless of your interpretation of your ability and your value.
That is a really great example, Bailey. That's exactly right. And so, what do you do in those situations, right? There are strategies around that as well. But that's right. Understanding what it will pay. And then some people make the choice to go back to school, or they may go to a different market, like choose a different sector. What's the adjacent kind of a role to what you do really well, and does it pay more? I mean, there are a lot of ways to think about it, but that's a great example. And then exposure changes based on those success behaviors because always recognize that the organization is prioritizing something specific that it's trying to get achieved. And so that's what when I mention understanding what the goals are at the highest level and the priorities, then aligning your work to that. Because if you do that, then hopefully you get to spend time, if you're very intentional about this, spending time with decision makers and people who, it's worth having that exposure with. They can change things. They can get you the reward and recognition that you want. Okay, so you're going to get a little bit of this now. We're going to talk about some stock flows. And let me just make sure that okay, there it is. Sometimes PowerPoint does its own thing, right? So we're all familiar with stock flow map, right? And what I want to do here, right, is just there are 4 questions. So I'm going to start with the ones on the inflow, right? Like if you're looking at this and you are thinking about your professional leadership reputation, now, a couple of things to say. You don't have to have a leadership role to be a leader, right? We know that you're leading in other ways. So put that hat on. And then professional reputation, as we are thinking about this, is anything that helps you or how other people perceive you and talk about you, right? As a leader. Now, there are some, there are negative and positive instances of that. And you can add any one here, right? But what we are really primarily focused on is increasing your professional reputation in a positive way that gets you to your goal. That's what I'm asking. So what is an action that can help increase your professional reputation? Those little variables and converters going into the, right? What do you, just call them out or put them in chat. And then eventually I'm going to ask someone because I want to hear how you're thinking about this. So good networking skills, listening abilities. Yep. Okay. What else? What is a way to talk about with those things? Good networking skills and presentation skills. Yeah. What is a way to talk about that? How do we think about people who do those things? Someone said likability. Ding, ding, ding. Reliability. Give that person a prize. Love that. Likability is a big one. I can't talk about that today because that's a whole lot, but likability is our big one. These other skills around networking. So what is another way to reframe that? How do you talk about it?
Approachable.
Approachable, yes. And I'm looking for, I know it's a very specific word, but I know you all can say, like, your interpersonal skills and how you relate to other people, right? Because the unspoken truth about leadership, oftentimes, it is a code word for can you lead other people? Do you have followership? Does that make sense? So I have time for one more. So I see authenticity. I see networking for me is about connecting people. Yes. Emotional and social intelligence. Empathy. All of those are right? Like those are the things that you can demonstrate and have other people think highly of you as you seek to increase your professional reputation in a positive way, and you demonstrate that you're prepared and ready to lead. All right. So what is a behavior different than just a general action? Is there specific behaviors that come to mind for you?
Humility.
Humility?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And why is that? Give me an example of how humility shows up in a positive way.
It brings about an acceptance of different perspectives without making somebody feel threatened or insecure.
Yeah, I love that. And I would add to that, you can share the sandbox. If you are a leader and your team comes up with an idea of someone else, and even though it may be something that you had come up with, but the fact that you can give someone else credit for it, you can share the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things. So humility is a very powerful example as well.
David, this is Richard. I also think of curiosity, right? So becoming curious about what's important to the organization, what's important to an individual, what's important to a team, so that whatever I deliver is in the context of what's found in that curiosity.
Yes, Richard, great example. Curiosity is another powerful word, right? Are you curious about people as well? So yeah, we like that.
And
Okay.
I also think it's important. This is Bill Lucas. Important to trust, right? So I think of the great example of leaders that uh, that I follow. They have something about them that is kind of unspoken. They walk in, you trust them. They say things, you believe it, right?
Yeah.
There's a level of trust there that is kind of hard to measure. It's just, sometimes they say things, someone has it or they don't. They just walk in, have a presence,
Yeah.
right?
What is one way? Yes, Trina said consistency in chat. And what is another way, right? Like the way you people are following through on what they said they would do.
Yeah.
We talk about it as say-do ratio. If you said you were going to do something and then you did that thing and you consistently doing that, right? Like that also says that you're trustworthy. So I love that example. Thank you for that. So let's move over to the things that decrease professional reputation. What can decrease or erode your professional reputation? What are the watch out fors?
Well, I think someone brought it up in the last conversation of the example of someone who would treated people poorly,
Yeah.
and how she never got promoted. She did good work, but because the way she treated people, she never got promoted.
Yeah, I believe that was Anita. Anita said that. Anita said that, excuse me. That was one example, I believe. And then there was someone else up there, so it's a good recall. And lack of reliability. Yeah, so thank you for that,
Would
Bonnie.
diplomacy be diplomacy?
Reframe that for me. You're saying diplomacy, which is good for increasing professional reputation. In this sense, are you saying a lack of diplomacy?
Or maybe then I should use a different word. So basically showing up as two different people in two different gatherings.
Oh, okay. Some people call that a lack of authenticity or um being two-faced, right?
Mhm.
Like whatever
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you are inconsistent in how you show up with people or you're switching constantly, then yes, that's absolutely, people start to question your authenticity. Now, that's different than what Anita said earlier about code switching. And the way I think about those are two different things. Code switching in some cases is, I mean, there are different versions of it, but understanding the room you're in, the situations you're in, and then making a strategic decision to make contours to how you show up, right? That's one way. To be someone who sows almost a sense of distrust and a lack of inconsistency in how you show up, that to me is a little different. So that's helpful. All right. I'm going to move on to this. Yeah, that's right. Insincerity. That's a great way to say it. That's right. Was want to know how to take you, right? Like that's how I think people think about it. So now, what is a behavior that might undermine or weaken your professional reputation? And how this is different is that one could, like right now specifically, I'm asking you to land on a behavior, something that people can monitor and see. Talking smack when people are not in the room. Yeah, that's a good one. That's right. You come across it. Go ahead. Disingenuous.
Yeah, not being genuine. Like you can tell when somebody's not like their personality is not that. I remember I used to have like a boss that every meeting, like whether he was talking or not, he'd be like, I'm like, okay, like this like I want to see the real you. I just can't see who you are.
Yeah, drop the veil, right? Yeah, drop the veil. I love that. Because trust is born.
Pointing finger.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I thought she was completing it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Alita?
go
Okay.
ahead.
I
Yeah, I
was
think
saying pointing fingers or putting blames on people, especially at times of crisis.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's a great example, right? Pointing fingers, blaming other people, trying to evade responsibility. Yeah. Unreliable. And how does unreliability show up? So we know it when we see it. I'm going to move on here as you answer that question because um,
Well,
I have
I was
another.
thinking like missing meetings or not being prepared, that type of thing.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. That's right. That's right. Just not up to the task. So that's a great example as well. Was that Bill or who was that? Like I didn't see him. I didn't see
Oh,
him
that
clear.
was Victor.
Oh, Victor. Thank you,
Yeah.
Victor. Okay, so I have another poll for you. And some of you may have already answered it, but this is in that same so you can go to menti.com, put in that code there, and then you can just answer question.
You have to choose just one, David?
Just one. Yeah, so I want to understand what might you leverage in the systems thinking to improve your leadership trajectory. And yes, Joan's question is wonderful because you might want to do a number of them, but just one, and you'll understand why later. So are you in? Okay, no, why is it not showing?
I submitted an answer and it doesn't seem to have rushed up on the screen.
Yeah, that's, okay, let's try that. As I see the answers coming in. Technical something going on here. So I see, oh, there it is. All right, give it one more minute and then we're going to move on. So I love that everyone is talking about their strategic value. So I want to hear for those folks who that's because that's the strong front runner right now. Let me hear from someone, particularly, someone who has not had a chance to speak as well. It would be great to hear from someone else here. How are you going to make your strategic value more visible? That's worth waiting for. Any brave souls? Because there are no right or wrong answers here. I just want to hear from you.
Hi, it's Stephen here.
Hi, Stephen.
I choose this one. I'm an external consultant, so I'm constantly trying to make sure that my strategic value is as high as possible because I can get let go at any time. So,
Yeah. How do you do that? How are you going to do that? Can you give us a specific example?
I think it's what you mentioned before, that it's resonated with me whenever making sure the value that I add, how is it linked to the company strategy, the objectives, and making sure that is visible as well.
Love that. Because framing gets you more exposure, visibility, right? Your identity linked to that also becomes an opportunity. I like it. And then we have two at 4, right? So one is testing limiting beliefs. Oh, it should have been, I missed the S on that. Limiting beliefs I've been holding. So who said that? Yeah.
I'm one of the people who said that.
Okay. And you want to say, yeah, just say
I
more.
have a tendency to devalue my contributions to highly visible work. And I know that I need to do a better job of looking more closely at that before I sort of shrug off other people's perceptions of that work.
Okay. Yeah. And you, what about it is, what about that? Why are you devaluing your work? I'm gonna move us along here in the interest of time.
I guess part of it is cultural. I'm a woman and I live in this world. And I've, grown up being told not to be attention seeking.
Yes.
And so finding the middle ground between that feels comfortable for me between what feels like, bragging or seeking attention versus
Taking ownership of your contribution.
yes, and acknowledging like my work in the same way that if someone else had done what I had done, I would acknowledge their work.
That's right. That's right. Credibly. Yeah, I love that. What you described, right, is what we know about this work, right? Like the mental models and the assumptions that we hold, which could probably be and everything in that iceberg, one of the most powerful things, right, is about our mental models, right? The social conditioning over time about our beliefs and conclusions that we make based on it. So you select whatever the data is, like what you see on the screen here. I jumped ahead is this reflexive loop, right? That beliefs that tend to skew everything that we see because of how we view the world from that mindset, right? So mental models, that was at the bottom piece here, right? Like I jumped ahead, but it like in the case of James, right? He believed that his work was just good enough, and based on that, that should speak for itself, and that by itself should got him the recognition. And so when our conversations are like me saying, okay, no, you got to do a little more. You got to highlight it for people. You got to talk about why it's valuable. How is the contribution important for the team and for the overall goal? He looked at that as attention seeking and bragging and, wanting the spotlight. Um, right? So we had to disrupt that and to say, okay, no, there's a way to be able to talk about how you're contributing to the team without being braggadocious or right. And so that resonates with me for you, Bonnie. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I have to wrap this up. I'm gonna get the hook. So I will give you one last question. I'm gonna take that liberty. Anybody, anything that I said that you want a clarification on? Because if not, then I'm gonna quickly here, and I would encourage you to put in chat any one takeaway from today that you think is particularly going to be useful as you move forward. And we can do both because we're that good.
Can you come back and we do like a part 2 and finish it up, the slides what we didn't get to do or something?
Yeah, I would love to do, I don't know about a part 2, but no. No, I would absolutely encourage you all to be in touch. Because I am, honestly, I'm saying that, but I would be very open to a further discussion about all of this, right? There's a lot here to understand. I have a number of workbooks that I have created over time about this work as well. So there are lots of ways to be engaged with it. But I would entertain a continuation of this, Anita, just to be clear. Why? So any questions, comments?
And remember, this is being recorded, and the recording will be available, within 2 weeks. on the Water Center's YouTube channel. So you'll be able to see, somebody mentioned these slides. You'll be able to see this entire recording, including all the slides on the Water Center's YouTube channel. So you'll be able to, you know, gather all this knowledge and David's, you know, encapsulated knowledge here on the YouTube channel. So
Thank you. Richard, your parting comment is amazing, right? So, but you know, oftentimes people don't think of leadership in that context, but a leader makes room for other people to get credit as well. And so promotability comes out of that. So visibility and promotability a lot of times is very much linked when it's well done. So thank you all for showing up. I really appreciate that this was important enough for you to do that. I don't take it for granted. And you know, I think, oh, you know what, just let me go back here really quickly, because if you can, please be in touch through YouTube. And you know, I'll be happy to send information or whatever. Point you to articles. I have a lot of this stuff at Fingerprint. So if you just scan that lower right corner, you'll have my contact information. Connect with me. All right. Thank you again. Thank you.